February 5th, 2012. A cold Sunday morning in Graham, Washington, turned into a nightmare. A court-approved supervised visit had been scheduled for Josh Powell and his two sons, Charlie and Braden, at a small rental home. A social worker, an older woman named Elizabeth Griffin Hall, was responsible for watching over the visit. She never even made it inside. Josh opened the door, let the boys in, and slammed the door shut behind them, locking her out. Elizabeth banged on the door, shouting. Then, she smelled it, gasoline. Seconds later, the entire house exploded into flames. Firefighters arrived within minutes, but it was already too late. The house was engulfed. The roof had collapsed. The windows shattered from the blast. Inside, the remains of Josh Powell and his two sons were discovered, burned beyond recognition. Later, the truth came out. The explosion was no accident. Josh had meticulously planned the murder-suicide. He filled the home with gasoline, chopping kindling to spread the flames. Investigators found a hatchet near the children's bodies. He had attacked them before igniting the fire, though thankfully, the coroner determined that the smoke killed them before they suffered more. The final horror? Josh had emailed several people moments before the fire. Messages like, "I'm sorry. Goodbye." He had also written a chilling will. "I'm not able to live without my sons. I'm sorry for everyone I've hurt." He blamed the courts, the system, and everyone but himself. The public outcry was immediate. People asked, how could this happen? Why were these boys allowed anywhere near their father? At the time, Josh was under intense scrutiny. His father had been convicted of child pornography. His own behavior had raised red flags. Yet, despite warnings from child welfare advocates and psychological experts, the visits continued. Even worse, the visit took place in a private residence, not a neutral visitation center. The system meant to protect these children had failed them, fatally. The Cox family was devastated. They had fought tooth and nail for custody, warning authorities that Josh was dangerous. But their warnings fell on deaf ears. Now, they weren't just missing a daughter. They had lost their only grandchildren. In the weeks following the explosion, investigators turned back to the question that still loomed large. Where was Susan? Josh had taken that secret to his grave, but police hoped clues might remain. Searches intensified. Cadaver dogs were brought to abandoned mines and desert locations in Utah, areas Josh was known to frequent. For a moment, hope flickered that her remains would be found, bringing some closure. But nothing surfaced. Still, chilling fragments emerged. Police later discovered Josh had backed up hundreds of gigabytes of files before the explosion. Files that included notes, photos, and disturbing entries. He had been documenting everything, his grievances, his rants, and his ultimate plan. One file read, "This is the only way. They won't take my boys." Another, "Susan is gone. Nobody will find her." Through unimaginable grief, Susan's father, Chuck Cox, refused to give up. He channeled his sorrow into action. Chuck and his wife Judy filed lawsuits against the Washington Department of Social and Health Services for failing to protect their grandchildren. They campaigned for stricter oversight of supervised visits and better protection for children in high-risk custody battles. Their efforts led to Charlie and Braden's law, pushing for reforms in multiple states. The Cox family wanted to ensure that no one else had to suffer what they did. In the media, Chuck became the enduring face of the case, steady, sorrowful, but determined. His message was simple. We couldn't save Susan. We couldn't save the boys. But we can save the next child. But even in the wake of fire and tragedy, the case wasn't over. There were still unanswered questions about Stephen Powell, about evidence never made public, and about what Josh might have told others before his death. And then, years later, something unexpected surfaced. Years passed. Josh Powell was dead. His sons, Charlie and Braden, were taken from this world in an unspeakable act of betrayal. Stephen Powell, the voyeuristic father-in-law, had served time in prison and faded into obscurity. But there was still no trace of Susan. For her family, it was as if she had been swallowed by the earth itself, erased, but never forgotten. The investigation remained open. And despite the pain, Susan's family never gave up. And eventually, through court battles, digital evidence, and one final bombshell, secrets began to surface. Stephen Powell was released from prison in 2017 after serving time for voyeurism and possession of child pornography. But by then, his reputation was destroyed. Publicly, he remained silent about Susan's disappearance. But law enforcement believed he knew more than he ever let on. Some investigators speculated that Stephen might have helped Josh dispose of Susan's body, or at least knew where she was buried. But with Josh and Stephen both gone, those answers seemed to die with them. Stephen passed away in 2018, reportedly from natural causes. He never confessed, never offered closure, just silence. In 2020, detectives returned to the massive cache of digital files recovered from Josh Powell's hard drives before the murder-suicide. These files, encrypted, archived, and previously inaccessible, were finally cracked open with newer forensic tools. Inside were documents that included hand-drawn maps, references to abandoned mine shafts, and chilling notes titled Scenarios, where Josh laid out possible ways to kill someone and get away with it. One entry mentioned, "Incineration is final. No remains. No trace." Another file detailed rural areas in western Utah, miles off-grid, filled with caves, shafts, and old mining tunnels. Susan's family believes these are likely places Josh could have hidden her body. Searches resumed, some involving drones, some using advanced ground-penetrating radar, but no remains were found. Still, these digital fragments gave law enforcement the strongest evidence yet of premeditation. In 2020, nearly a decade after Susan vanished, her parents finally had their day in court. They filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the state of Washington, alleging that negligence by child welfare services led to the deaths of Charlie and Braden. The trial laid bare the warning signs that were ignored. Josh's refusal to cooperate with authorities, psychological evaluations labeling him a danger, the connection to Stephen Powell's criminal behavior, concerns voiced by Susan's family, repeatedly dismissed. In 2022, the Cox family won the case. The state was found negligent and ordered to pay $98 million in damages. But for Chuck and Judy Cox, it was never about the money. It was about justice, accountability, and ensuring the system never failed another family the way it failed theirs. Today, Susan Powell is still officially listed as a missing person. Her body has never been recovered. There's no grave to visit, just a memorial bench inscribed with her name beside the names of Charlie and Braden. Yet Susan's story endures. Her journals, recovered after her disappearance, reveal a woman fighting for her voice, documenting abuse, control, and isolation with heartbreaking clarity. They have become a symbol, a warning, to listen when women speak, to act when red flags appear, and to protect the most vulnerable, especially children caught in domestic conflict. Chuck Cox once said, "Susan was brave. She saw what was happening and tried to protect her boys. She didn't run. She didn't hide. And she paid the ultimate price for it." Through the Susan Cox Powell Foundation, the family continues to advocate for victims of domestic violence. They offer education, support, and push for legislative reforms. Susan's voice was stolen, but her story still speaks. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic abuse, please know you are not alone. There is help, there is support, and there is hope. Broken Hearts share this video to raise awareness. Bell subscribe to True Crime Hub for more real, heartbreaking stories that deserve to be told. Candle # comment below. Do you believe Susan's remains will ever be found? Should Josh's father have been charged? Let's never forget Susan, Charlie, and Braden Powell, a family torn apart, but never silenced.